Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
And I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Wednesday, April 20th, 2022. My name is Emma Bigland, in for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Daisy Pitkin, organizer at Workers United and author of On the Line, a story of class, solidarity, and two women's epic fight to build a union. And later in the program, Brianna Wu of Rebellion PAC is here to talk about their work on behalf of Nina Turner's race. Meanwhile, Ukrainian troops in Mariupol, holed out in a steel plant, have defied another Russian deadline to surrender. There is ostensibly an exit route for civilians in that same plant, but their safety is far from guaranteed. There are civilians there who have been sheltering for over 50 days and are running short on food and supplies. COVID cases are increasing in the majority of states in the U.S. right now, particularly in the Northeast and Midwest. Despite this, the White House has said that it will not appeal a Trump-appointed judge's broad ruling striking down transit mask mandates unless the CDC deems it necessary. He is the president of deferrals. And in the meantime, the CDC has dropped all countries from its do not travel list. But in related news to the transit mask mandate, Uber and Lyft are dropping their mask mandates for drivers and passengers. When it rains, it pours. COVID. The Biden administration will revive the parts of the National Environmental Policy Act that Trump scrapped, requiring climate impacts be taken into consideration before federal agencies approve major construction projects. And lastly, in Florida, Ron DeSantis has asked lawmakers to look into axing Disney's 55-year-old special taxing district designation, which allows them to self-govern. That's stupid, but it begs the question, why was Disney allowed to self-govern in the first place? All this and more on today's program. Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. It is hump day. Unfortunately, Brad, I have to say it, contractually
it's 420
obligated.
hump day.
Oh, yeah.
Which is,
Can't wait for it to be 69 o'clock.
what is 69 o'clock?
At military
7:30?
time. Our beloved Bradley also has COVID now, so it's just myself and Matt in the studio. Bradley's doing all right, though. We have him virtually. Sorry if I outed you, Bradley, but I figured maybe we should just contextualize how everybody in this city is getting COVID right now. And a dropping of mask mandates on transit is probably a bad idea. Probably, right?
Yeah. Just roll with it.
Speaking of that, let's turn to this clip of President Biden here. We mentioned on the show yesterday that a Trump-appointed judge who was deemed to be basically unqualified by the bar and yet was appointed anyway after having very little experience. She's
Just
in her
keep that in mind
30s.
when Democrats try to place somebody on the Supreme Court and the Republicans talk about experience and
And
qualification.
LSAT scores? Yeah. Where was this judge's LSAT scores? She was in her early 30s, essentially, and ruled that because masks don't sanitize you, we don't need to use them, as if there's some sort of sanitization bar as established by legal precedent. It was insane. And so you would think, as the opposition party to an insane Republican Party that denies science, that wants people to die of COVID because they were in favor of dropping any and all restrictions that would protect people, because, capitalists, we can't have this anymore. We've got to keep the economy churning. You would think that the Biden administration would come out aggressively against that kind of insane ruling. Well,
This is wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You did a great job up here.
Mr. President, should people continue to wear masks on planes?
That's up to them.
Would you like to appeal the ruling or the ruling that the judge made striking down the mandate?
I haven't spoken to the CDC yet. Thank you. All right.
Going here a little bit, Mr. President.
all right. Well, then Biden yucks it up with that guy there. That was really it. So he says he hasn't spoken to the CDC yet. It's up to individuals essentially. But I think he means when he says it's up to them, it's up to the individual airlines. So it's up to individuals on the airlines if they want to wear a mask. Doesn't matter that this is not like a personal choice about what you want to dye your hair color, what your hair color is going to be, if you're going to wear jeans or leggings today. No, this is about a mitigation effort that affects everybody in that enclosed space on the plane, on the bus, on the train, in the Uber, etc. This affects other people. Your masking is not an individual act. And when it comes to the airlines, frankly, the Biden administration has shown a concerning deference to what their requests are, what their preferences are, and that's been epitomized by the way that Pete Buttigieg, as the head of the Department of Transportation, has conducted his business. Matt Stoller of the American Economic Liberties Project, friend of the show, he's been on a few times. Can we pull this tweet thread up? Because it highlights how this is not the bug in the Biden administration as are when it comes to dealing with the transportation industry and airlines rather. This is the feature. If you want to know Biden's problem, consider that Pete Buttigieg is an unmitigated catastrophe at the Department of Transportation, yet there's no criticism at all of his tenure on the Hill or within partisan media. The Dem political machine has no feedback loop to reality. This is, again, Matt Stoller's opinion, but I found it pretty compelling. Why do I think Pete Buttigieg is a disaster at the Department of Transportation? No reason. And then he cites this mass cancellation that I talked about a little bit on the show when it was happening, of these airlines. Over the first weekend of April, over 10,000 flights were canceled. And since travel was ticking up again, airlines have basically been actively compromising the customer experience, ripping them off, because frankly, they don't want to hire more people. Stoller continues, the Department of Transportation has authority to regulate unfair methods of competition in air travel as well as consumer deception. This is very broad authority, and literally everyone else is preempted from doing anything. This is the Department of Transportation's authority, and they're choosing not to exercise it. We can scroll down a little bit there. The unwillingness to judge policymakers on actually, he's responding to criticism of this thread, not as relevant. Consumer groups last year met with Buttigieg on a range of issues, including flight cancellations. He has done nothing to address any of their concerns. I suspect this is probably true across much of DOT's portfolio, though I know more about airlines. Here are the priorities listed on the Department of Transportation site. I don't see supply chains on there. DOT is a mess, and we need someone who knew the department to restore some institutional capacity. Buttigieg is smart, but no one's pressing him to do that. Since people don't understand why there are mass cancellations, neither COVID waves nor weather are the real culprit. The lack of redundancy is. Airlines laid off staff instead of retaining them, even though they got bailout money, so this wouldn't happen. And that is the main point there. We're good on that. But he does, when he says that he suspects that this incompetence and deference to industry is probably true across much of the Department of Transportation's portfolio, he is right. He is right, because I found this article from the American Prospect from December that made that same claim. Made the claim that it was more broad, as specifically in reference to the supply chain crisis that we were seeing. Getting excited about deliverables would be a marked change for Buttigieg, who has thus far failed to mobilize the sweeping powers of the Department of Transportation and its battalion of sub-agencies to combat a supply chain crisis driven in no small part by deregulation of the transportation sector. The root causes of the supply chain bottlenecks have far less to do with the kinds of renovations to roads, bridges, and ports. In President Biden's recently signed infrastructure bill, legislation Buttigieg has seized on as a personal accomplishment and used as an opportunity to shake hands with the senators whose support he'll likely be hoping for come 2024, and far more to do with the lack of oversight of corporations now profiting off the mess. As the Los Angeles Times noted earlier this month, again, this is an older article from December, the ocean shipping industry is on track to make more profit in 2021 than it has in the last decade. The supply chain crisis, in other words, has been a gold mine for the same firms that are supposed to be fixing it. Freight forwarding companies have doubled their profits, and warehouse companies have come close to doing the same. In the first half of 2021, ocean shippers saw their profits rise 2,200% over the equivalent 2020 span to $23 billion. Sam, I know, has highlighted some of these rapid increases before on the show. But as profits skyrocket, capacity building to deliver and store more consumer goods, as well as fair labor practices, remain stagnant. Essentially, too, with the trucking industry, Buttigieg had the opportunity to speak out about the trucking industry's unfair labor practices, where they're claiming that there's a shortage in the labor market, but really the reality is that they don't want to pay their truckers fair wages, compensate them fairly, and they want them to essentially be contractors without any security. And Buttigieg has done nothing to address those kinds of things. So the point here is that this is not an aberration. The Biden administration has shown significant deference, not just in rhetoric, that like we saw there with Biden, to the airline industry and other transportation industries, but in practice, in the way that the Department of Transportation has been run under Pete Buttigieg, whose experience in this field was mocked when he was appointed to this position, but rightly so, because clearly he's not done, doesn't have any of the requisite experience that you would need to be a regulator, but at the same time, we understand how he feels about corporate profits. Yeah.
I think that's all the important thing to emphasize with regard to Biden's inaction. I just want to say one thing on the sort of right-wing narratives, like the Dorr, Rogan, Weinstein, those sorts of types that have been anti-maskers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who have been saying, "Oh, this is tyranny," and actually, if they can make you comply with wearing a mask, they can make you do. What else can they make you do? Well, you should all be embracing your Uncle Joe right now. He's really delivering for you. He's ending the tyranny. This is like a Berlin Wall moment. He's a liberator on like Lincoln, and he's gone against a secret NWO plan to make you wear masks all the time. So look at that. All that happened, and all it took was Biden just getting voted into office. So all those folks should probably be enthusiastic supporters of the Democratic Party, because centrist Joe, he's listening to him.
He's got your back. And who knows? I mean, Biden in the end could change his tune.
I mean, that would be the Democratic thing, to wait for the CDC to do that and then say, actually, this institution says I need to do this. And if they do that, fine, I guess. It's better than not, but especially if we get another giant wave right on the tail of this. But
I mean, what happened last time we lifted the mask mandate? Oh, wait. It seems insane to me.
And it'd be one thing, like, and that's the thing about, like, it doesn't pay the people who have been saying this is just a cold. what should be happening right now is the only way that this sort of makes sense to me is in a world where we've decided, oh yeah, because this thing is so prevalent and endemic, we're just going to extend healthcare to everybody.
Yeah.
But go out and get sick and get the economy running. And if you get sick, you got free healthcare. But no, it's just a cold, so we're just going to go back to the status quo.
With that said, we're going to head into a quick break, but first we have a sponsor for you. It is 420, right? We are aware of this.
It is, yes.
Yes.
I think I checked my calendar this morning.
I will be celebrating. I don't know about you, Matt, but
I will be.
You will be?
Yeah.
Well, you have left reckoning, but I mean, I guess that doesn't stop you.
Yeah, no.
That would give me anxiety. But I do want to get some of these amazing Sunset Lake C, B, D products. I can't do that every time, but now people who might be listening are like, what is Sebe Day? I spaced it out. Hopefully it gets around any algorithm. Sunset Lake is having a 420 sale. It's 420 today. No better time to buy Sunset Lake because it's 40% off smokables like hemp flower, pre-rolls, and keef. 30% off everything else. No promo code needed. Products are already discounted on the website. Sunset Lake CBD and Majority Report are teaming up to turn everyone's favorite stoner holiday into a fundraising opportunity for the Innocence Project, a great organization, one of my favorites for a long time, and they've been working to undo the damage of the war on drugs. Here's how it works. Visit sunsetlakecbd.com starting Wednesday, but today is 420, going through the end of the week, the 24th actually, up until midnight. Sunset Lake will be offering 40% off smokables like hemp flower, pre-rolls, and keef, and every other product will be 30% off. Again, I love the tincture. I had it last night. Helps me go to sleep. One of the only things that works for me, truly. And the healthiest thing that works for me, too. Honestly. I don't want to get into those pharmaceuticals. It's a bad road to get down. And so Sunset Lake has been great, even though I have I'm a bad sleeper. Always have been. Sunset Lake will donate 4.20% of sales to the Innocence Project, a nonprofit organization that works to free the innocent, prevent wrongful convictions, and create fair, compassionate, and equitable systems of justice for everyone. Sunset Lake CBD is a majority employee-owned business that donated more than $26,000 last year to anti-drug war organizations, animal shelters, union strike funds, nature conservation, food shelves, and refugee resettlement organizations. Again, visit Sunset Lake CBD.com. It's probably doing nothing.
That doesn't trick the computer. Sorry.
Damn it. To take advantage of these discounts and help Majority Report raise money for a great organization. Sale ends April 24th at 11:59 p.m. Take advantage now. All right, folks, we have to take a quick break, but when we come back, we will be joined by Daisy Pitkin. We are back, and we are joined now by Daisy Pitkin, organizer at Workers United and author of On the Line, a story of class solidarity and two women's epic fight to build a union. Daisy, thanks so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here, Emma. Thanks.
Of course. So your book is beautiful. It's this is a story largely about your work to help organize laundry workers in Arizona over in the early 2000s.
Mhm.
And I didn't expect it to have this kind of romantic feel to it and nostalgia for the organizing. The tales of the working conditions are a whole different thing. I want to make that clear. But was that a deliberate choice on your part to kind of embed the passion that you feel into the style of writing?
Yeah, it was. I think, I think that the kind of passion that I felt and the lyricism that I think the book embraces is important to what the kind of idea that I have in the book, or the thinking that I'm doing about the role of emotion in organizing, right? The kind of care and love that is a part of solidarity, that is the foundation of building a union. And I also think that, it's important to have kind of a humanizing, even literary portrait of an organizing campaign. I wanted to write a book that might find its way to readers who wouldn't normally pick up a book about labor. And I hope this book can do that, because it's important. It's a good time for it.
Absolutely. And I mean, another choice you make is throughout the book, you'll use the second, person pronoun you to directly relate to the audience, telling stories of some of the conditions of workers that you organized with. Can you talk about that choice as well?
Yeah, when I started writing some of the original material for this book, I had no idea that it would be a book. I'd been gone from the labor movement after a really severe burnout and kind of heartbreak over some internal strife that was happening inside the union, as happens sometimes. And I was away from the labor movement for a couple of years, and was really thinking a lot about this worker leader who I had a close relationship with. Her name is Alma. And I was in the hospital one night passing a kidney stone. It was horrific. But I was laying in a hospital bed wrapped in blankets and sheets and in a hospital gown that I knew in the morning was going to be loaded onto the back of a truck and sent up the I-10 in Arizona and put into the back of Alma's factory, because the hospital I was at was a client of her industrial laundry. And she was going to touch those sheets. She was going to touch the linens that I was laying in. And I hadn't talked to her for years at that point, and I was missing her. So I went home the next day and just started writing to her, trying to remember the campaign that we worked on that took years. It was a Herculean task to organize these industrial laundries across Phoenix. It wouldn't have happened without her. She's one of the gutsiest worker leaders I've ever met. But so some of the original material just kind of came out in this second person address to her. And I decided to keep that form because the book in some ways is about the intimacy of solidarity. It's about the sort of the intimate space of an organizing campaign, and really embracing that and that feeling, what it feels like to organize in that way. And I wanted to invite readers into that kind of closed space. And so I kept the second person you to invite them into that.
I love that choice because are we hearing a little echo? Okay, yeah, we got it. I love that choice because as you mentioned, it brings the reader into the intimacy of the space, but it also I think highlights the inherently human and like almost visceral emotional work that labor organizing really is. I mean, to an outside viewer who's maybe reading an article about Amazon's union fight, there's card check, there's voting, there's organizing, there's pamphlets, but this is about solidarity between individuals. So I mean, can you talk about that element of it and maybe use that as a way to introduce viewers to your journey at the start of the 2000s in Arizona with this particular organizing effort?
Yeah, I think, there are a lot of really good books out there about labor, but a lot of them talk about what happened on a campaign or what happened in a certain era or occurrence or event in labor history. And most of them are really well written, right? But I as a reader, I was really craving a story that could talk about what it feels like to be on an organizing campaign. and not just the sort of highlights reel, like Norma Ray standing on the table holding up the union sign. Or, I write about some of the labor history in my book as well, the foundational sort of events of the union that I worked for, the uprising of the 20,000 shirtwaist strikers, the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. And I'm really interested in the ways that those stories are kind of told, that we end up sort of relying on the highlights reel, that Clara Lemlich was an anonymous wisp of a girl who got hoisted up onto a stage and called for a general strike. And I really wanted to write a book that was more of the real story of organizing, which is a lot of repetitive, sometimes boring, unsexy things. It's a lot of like driving around with people in circles around a city looking for coworkers to talk to about the union. It's a lot of late night shift meetings. It's a lot of setting up for meetings and then cleaning up after and making copies of the leaflet that you're going to hand out. It's that kind of grind of organizing where I think the sacred space of building solidarity actually happens. I mean, I think that's where a union is built. It's in the time and the grind of organizing the union. And I wanted to write a book that really embraces that work and honors it, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is a silly just aside, really, but it kind of reminds me of when I'm a big sports fan. You can get caught up in the romanticism of teams and the camaraderie that's built, because there is something inherently beautiful about that. But this one's, for wages. And you mentioned the Triangle fire, and you go into that a bit in terms of the history of Unite in your second chapter, which is the International Union of Textile Workers that you were working for here. Can you recount that history a little bit and speak about why it was so important to understanding the fight that you and the laundry workers were engaging in nearly 100 years later?
Yeah. In the book, when I write about the history, and I didn't know until I was kind of in the middle of it, that there's this really interesting, for me at least, echo on both sides of the century. So there, in the early 1900s, Clara Lemlich, Rose Schneiderman, other shirtwaist workers who were, worked in small factories across New York making blouses, essentially, and formed the backbone of the International Ladies Garment Workers Union. But there's a lot that echoes from the stories of their organizing and the stories of laundry worker organizing in the early 2000s. Part of that is that labor law in this country is really broken, right? There are massive loopholes that the multi-million-dollar union avoidance industry helps employers walk straight through, right? The right to organize in this country is, back almost to the place where before the National Labor Relations Act was passed in the 1930s. And what we saw when Clara Lemlich and Rose Schneiderman and other activists formed the union in the early 1900s is that in order to get employers to pay attention to them, to come to the table, they had to take massive collective action. And I think that we're sort of back to a similar place now, 100 years later, 100 plus years later, that in order to win fights, we're going to have to take massive collective action. So there's that kind of echo inherent in the book that we're back to, in some ways, the same place we were when the union was founded. But I write a lot about those two events, the uprising of the 20,000, because that's a story that as a young organizer, I was taught to tell. We have a first organizing meeting with workers who are organizing to form a union with Unite, and now also with Workers United, the union that I work for now. And we tell that story, the uprising of the 20,000, and we tell the story of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire, because the uprising of the 20,000 was one of the most inspiring events in our union's history. There was a general strike of 20,000 shirtwaist strikers, and they brought nearly 500 employers to the table, and created some safety standards inside those shops. They raised wages, they capped working hours, etc. we tell the story of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire because that was one of the employers, one of the few that would not acquiesce to the strikers' demands. And the strike was called, and workers went back to the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory without an agreement. And 13 months later, a fire happened, one of the most, atrocious industrial disasters in this country's history. And 146 workers, mostly immigrant women, many of them teenagers, either burned to death in the factory or jumped to escape the flames. So I feel like the telling of that story is really important because it's a story about what happens if we lose, right? The high stakes of organizing, why it's so crucial to win an organized, empowered working class.
Right. It's a reminder of, how deadly conditions, or the deadly consequences of letting employers and bosses run rampant. And so, can you dive a little bit deeper into the work specifically at these Arizona industrial laundries? What were some of the conditions that you witnessed? And you mentioned your connection when you were hospitalized for kidney stone, and how that gown would then be washed by the same people that you organized with, because they deal with blood, syringes, feces, lots of dangerous substances on the clothing that they were not protected from prior, or still.
Yeah.
Still it's difficult, obviously.
Yeah, I think industrial laundry work is something that a lot of people don't know about. It tends to be invisible work. But in the outskirts of sort of every major city, every large community, there are massive warehouses full of heavy, hot machinery where hundreds of workers launder linen from hospitals and also from hotels and restaurants. So anytime you go to a hospital, most times when you go to a hotel, some still wash their linens in-house. Or if you go to a restaurant that might have cloth napkins and tablecloths, those linens are washed by people. Human hands will touch those items in a big factory. Alma worked at a hospital laundry in Phoenix. And she worked in a department called the soil sort department, which is where all of the dirty linen from hospitals comes into the plant. And she and her coworkers in that department were in charge of sorting it. So putting sheets in one bin and blankets in another bin, hospital gowns in another bin, and so on. And so the linens come, and about 300 pounds of them get dumped onto a conveyor belt, and it moves down a conveyor belt, and workers are stationed alongside the conveyor belt and have to sort this linen very quickly. And you can imagine what comes tangled in the sheets from a hospital or from a surgical center. I mean, we're talking about fluids bags, surgical tools still wrapped in the sheets, syringes, scalpels. There are body parts. There's every kind of human bodily fluid you can imagine. And workers are working very quickly. So they're coming into contact with chemical and biohazards on a minute-to-minute basis. I mean, constantly, right? And, in union laundries, workers can form health and safety committees that get trained by health and safety experts within the union, by OSHA, to spot hazards, to understand what kind of personal protective equipment they deserve and should have and will keep them safe. And in non-union laundries, often that does not happen. So in Alma's laundry, workers were giving gloves to sort the linen, but the gloves they didn't get new gloves every day. They often had to rinse and reuse the gloves that they had. Sometimes the coating on the gloves would get cracked and their skin was exposed. Workers would get punctured with needles and cut by scalpels. And that's just in the soil sort department. On the other side of the plant, after the linen is cleaned, workers are working on big, heavy machines that are hot. Burns are not at all uncommon. It's not uncommon for safety guards to be removed or taken off of machines so that production can run faster through the plant. So it's really imperative in these industrial laundries for workers to be educated and empowered to speak up about their own health and safety.
In particular, there was an example of a worker who had to crawl through a tunnel washer. It sounds so dangerous. I don't want to really mess up the details. Do you mind telling that story?
Yeah, in most industrial laundries, the washer is a big tunnel. It's sort of like as long as a school bus, you can picture. And, linen gets sorted linen gets dumped down in one end and works its way through this tunnel and comes out the other end. And sometimes there are jams in the middle of the tunnel. And what should happen when there's a jam is that the machine should be locked out. And all power sources to the machine should be cut. It should have time to cool so that someone who is skilled in confined space entry should go in and then clear the jam, and then they start the machine back up. But a lot of times, shutting a machine down like that, you lose a lot of production time. And when there's high production pressure, workers don't do that all the time. And they climb into the tunnel sometimes before shutting it down, before cooling it down, to clear jams, just to keep production up so they can make their production quota. And there was a worker in this plant who did that. And it's incredibly, incredibly dangerous. Workers die in industrial laundries. And my book is dedicated to a worker who died in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in an industrial dryer because a safety guard had been removed from a conveyor that takes the wet linen up into an industrial dryer, and he got pulled into the dryer, and it turned on automatically. So they're incredibly dangerous places to work.
Right. And so to prove your case and to start building your case as an organizer, you describe having to working with Alma, whose story I want to tell in a second, but just some of it was like spy stuff where you have to steal the linens, as you say, to prove your case. Talk a bit about that work that you and your fellow organizers did.
Yeah, I mean, in all organizing campaigns, it's important to be prepared for the anti-union campaign that workers will most certainly face, right? In most every industry, every campaign I've ever worked on, there has been an anti-union campaign on the part of the employer. And, one of the methods that has been used that I got trained on was this sort of blitz method of organizing, where you work quietly. In English, we say underground. In Spanish, we call it bajo el agua. So working kind of secretly to form a committee of workers who are committed to building the union in their work site, and then also help to build a list of all of their coworkers and their contact information so that we can do what we call a blitz, which is over the course of a weekend, which is when managers are usually not in the plant. They take weekends off. So from Friday evening when they leave the plant until Monday morning when we know they're going to have caught wind of the organizing and they're going to start hitting back really hard, threatening people, bribing people, surveilling people, all the tactics that they borrow from. We have like a 48-hour window to try to visit everyone and talk to them about the union, just to give them a fair chance of deciding before there's a lot of intimidation and harassment, whether or not they want to sign a union card and form a union. So in Alma's factory, there were about 220 workers, and we tried to visit and ended up almost pulling it off. 220 workers at their homes over the course of 48 hours. Wow. And then on Sunday evening, we hold a general meeting and try to get as many of those workers together in one space so that they can look each other in the eye and make a commitment that they're going to fight for this union that they've decided to build come hell or high water. And it is hell and high water that they end up facing, both in the story in my book and just sort of on the regular. That's what happens.
you talk about Alma a lot, and I in terms of the hell that is faced, Alma was retaliated against for organizing. Now, this kind of retaliation is very common. It's supposed to be illegal, but we see it regularly. Most famously in the news right now, Christian Smalls in the Amazon Staten Island warehouse was retaliated against for organizing. This happened specifically in your case with Alma. Do you mind talking about that part?
Yeah. So in Alma's factory that Monday morning after the Blitz, when they went back into the factory, there was already an anti-union consultant there. And the company started holding captive audience meetings, which is what it's called when they pull groups of workers or one worker at a time, sometimes happening right now in Starbucks, into a room on the clock and have a mandatory meeting where workers have to listen to their employers campaigning against the union. And in her case, they showed this video called Little Card, Big Trouble. And it was like this group of anonymous workers sitting around a boardroom in the dark talking about how much trouble they'd gotten themselves into by signing that union card. And it was done in like very badly dubbed Spanish. The workers made fun of it forever. But the company admitted to holding over 200 captive audience meetings in the 3.5-week period between when workers filed to have a union election and when the NLRB actually held the election. So for 3.5 weeks, there was just this gauntlet that workers had to move through. And a few days into that, so this was May 1st of 2003, Alma and her coworkers were sick of it. They were sick of the company trying to break the back of the union that they had built. So they signed a petition saying, we're forming a union. In fact, we've already formed it. It's just a matter of you recognizing our union at this point. And we want you to stop trying to break it. And they signed this petition and they marched it into the office of the Industrial Laundry. And at first, the plan was just to have a small delegation of workers bringing the petition to their bosses. But so many of Alma's coworkers wanted to go on the delegation that they ended up staging a work stoppage because all of them left the floor and marched in to deliver this petition. And Alma and 3 of her coworkers who were kind of leading the charge were fired on the spot in front of all of their coworkers. Though the company later tried to claim that they had been permanently replaced during the time that they were on the delegation to the office.
Seems like a distinction without difference, but...
Yeah, at the end of the day, someone doesn't have a job, right? But permanently replacing striking workers is legal in most cases under current labor law. So if the company had gotten away with saying that, you know, in the 20 minutes of the work stoppage, they actually had managed to hire 4 new people, they could have gotten away with it. They didn't end up getting away with it.
So now that's my my next question. Talk about the how things ended up and the hard work and legal battle here.
You know, so during that 3.5 weeks, the company did manage to scare a lot of people through threats and writing people up and surveillance and all kinds of things. They scared enough people that when the NLRB held the union election in the plant, workers lost. They lost by about 20 votes. And but they had filed enough unfair labor practice charges that there was a court hearing. You know, after some investigation, the NLRB decided to bring suit against the company because they believed that they had violated labor law. And so we went through an 18-day trial where about 10% of the workers in the plant testified in front of a federal administrative law judge who later decided, you know, the trouble with this kind of process is that it takes forever, right? So we filed for a union election. We lost the union election 3.5 weeks later. Months and months later, after a ton of investigation, there was finally this hearing. And then we had to wait months and months more to hear what the judge's decision was. But the judge in this case issued a really extraordinary remedy. Bless you.
Thank you.
More often than not, the stiffest penalty the NLRB can award, or what they can, the worst they can make a company do, is put up like a posting in the work site where they've violated the law, maybe fired people, maybe disciplined people, maybe threatened them, maybe bribed them. The worst they usually have to do is put up a posting saying, we're sorry and we violated the law and we'll try not to do it again.
Right.
That's it. Why wouldn't you break the law if you were a boss trying to avoid having a union? It's like begging to be broken because there are no teeth to it. But in this case, the judge ruled that the company had violated the law so egregiously that they awarded what's called a bargaining order and required the company to recognize the union outright without any other process, because there had been a clear majority on union cards when we filed for the election. And the company clearly eroded that support through an illegal anti-union campaign, right? So that's the first time that it happened in Arizona history, that an award like that had been given through the labor board. But of course, the company chose to appeal. And the appeal, I won't give away the end of the book, but it would have taken years to go through that process. So even in that little bit of justice, there was no justice, right?
Right. I mean, and that seems to be a through line in successful or labor fights that end in some victories, because there's it's a David versus Goliath thing. There is a powerful actor that can exert their pressure and retaliate. And I guess I would love to move to a larger conversation about where we are today with labor organizing, because part of what makes your book so salient is the fact that we're witnessing, and we had Alex Press on last week of Jacobin to talk about how maybe don't hype up too much the organizing efforts around the country, because we don't want to downplay the still significant obstacles presented by major corporations like Amazon, Starbucks, and smaller union fights across the country, like the truckers in the Port of Los Angeles, et cetera, things like that. But I guess I am curious about your take, because you have such a background in this, on what we are seeing today. Is it is the media, or is the left resurgent more willing to accept and stand behind some of these fights? I mean, what is the change that you've seen in the nearly 20 years since the original writing of or the story that you tell in this book?
I mean, I hear what Alex is saying, that we don't want to sort of overblow what's happening, right? Or overstate what's happening. But I will say that as a long-term organizer, I have never seen anything like what's happening right now. And I think that's important to say. And I tend to be fairly conservative in my outlooks on such things. And so I'm not like a diehard optimist, but I feel really inspired. And what I'm seeing right now is a true groundswell of worker activity. It's not sort of like heavy-handed, top-down, generated by paid staff organizers and unions like me, right? This is a groundswell of worker energy and momentum and militancy, frankly, that I haven't seen before, ever. We have an organizing committee member on the Starbucks campaign here in Pittsburgh who used an analogy that I kind of like. A couple of weeks ago in an organizing committee meeting, he said, it feels like the company, and I think this can be applied not just to Starbucks, but to a lot of the bigger corporations right now. They don't quite understand the nature of the momentum that they're up against. And they're pulling from the same old anti-union playbook. And some of it's working a little bit in some places, but by and large, it's just backfiring. because they don't understand the nature of the momentum that they're facing. And so the analogy that he used was, it's like there's a tidal wave coming at them and they're standing there trying to squirt at it with squirt guns. Like everything they do just sort of adds a little bit more fuel to the tidal wave, the body of the tidal wave that's rushing at them. And I do, I want to be careful not to overstate what's happening, but I'm deeply inspired by the fact that workers are rising up and organizing themselves and each other. And it puts a lot of really interesting focus on the role of staff union organizers like me, right? Like paid professional experts in the union. What is our role? What's our role in the union at this point? I think it's very different from what my role was in Phoenix in the early 2000s, organizing industrial laundry workers. I think that at this point, and in daily conversations with other organizers, we're thinking about this in ways that we never have before. Really interrogating the role of the paid staff organizer, and like whatever experience and expertise I have needs to be democratized immediately, right? It's about democratizing the knowledge and expertise held by staff inside the union and then getting out of the way, because what's important on these campaigns right now is momentum,
right?
And not quashing that in any way.
I mean, it's noble to say that, and it's also, but it's essential as well, right? Because it also pairs interestingly with how the Amazon union in particular wasn't a part of the AFL-CIO or larger union infrastructure. Is that something that is additionally encouraging to you, because there's a surge in an understanding that we can make these unions independent and we don't need larger unions to back us up here?
I think what's inspiring to me about it is that there are all kinds of tools available that people are experimenting with, right? That are not inside the traditional structure of the labor movement. So ALU and the kind of grassroots campaign they ran there. There are all kinds of online tools now that workers are using to connect with each other and talk about issues and issue campaigning. And there are lots of traditional unions that are doing the grind and hard work of organizing too. And I feel like the toolbox has just increased its capacity dramatically. And that's what's really inspiring to me about it. I think that we have not, sorry if this counters anything you said, Alex, who I respect and admire and is very smart, but I feel like we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg right now. This is the beginning of something that is going to grow beyond, institutionalized labor, like beyond the current labor movement's capacity. It's going to grow faster than that. And so we're going to see all kinds of experiments happening. And most of them, I think right now, stand a chance of being successful.
Yeah, I hope I did not mischaracterize Alex's position. It's been a few days since that, but yes, of course, Alex is an essential writer on labor, the essential writer on labor in the country. So, yeah. Lastly, what would be some advice that you would give to people, workers thinking about organizing right now?
I would say that now is the time. I mean, right now, if you're thinking about organizing your workplace, regardless of sort of your, the way your employment is coded. I was talking to someone who's a maker for Etsy a couple days ago, who approached me asking, like, what do you think about the Etsy strike? And, we're not really employees. What do you think that we can win this? What do you think is going to happen? And I said, I think it doesn't matter whether you're a traditional employee even or not. If someone's making money off of your labor, you have power. And now is the time to use it, because there is so much momentum, because there is this sort of growing groundswell. I think that the fight has just begun, and this is the time.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Daisy Pitkin, organizer at Workers United and author of On the Line, A Story of Class Solidarity in Two Women's Epic Fight to Build a Union. I couldn't recommend this book more highly. In fact, I just did to my stepsister. So I really encourage everybody to read it. So thanks so much, Daisy. Really appreciate your time today.
That's amazing to hear. And thank you so much.
Of course. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. But when we come back, we will be joined by Brianna Wu. We are back, and we are joined now by Brianna Wu of Rebellion PAC. Thank you so much for being here, Brianna.
Thank you so much, Emma. Before we start, I have to gush. I've been watching Majority Report since the 2004 race with Janine Garofalo and Sam.
Oh, wow.
I've seen this show in every iteration. I'm a member, and I really mean this. The show you and Matt and Nomiki and everyone are doing right now is the best the show has ever been, and you should really be proud of that.
Thank you so much. All right, see you later. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
We don't need to talk about anything else, but no, thank you so much for your kind words. It's greatly appreciated. But I want to talk about your work because obviously, I was speaking a little bit with Jank, and he was talking about some of the emphasis that and money he's putting behind Nina Turner here. This race is immensely important. We're seeing crypto PACs backing Chantel Brown, and it seems like they're this is a tantalizing second bite at the apple here for Nina Turner, because there are a lot of different dynamics from the first time that she ran against Chantel Brown versus now. So what are some of the opportunities that you and Rebellion PAC are seeing in this second time around?
100%. If I could just kind of start by talking about what makes what we do at Rebellion a little bit different. And it kind of starts with how I met Jank in the first place, right? I was running for Congress here in Massachusetts. He was running for Congress. We found we had some really shared values. And when it came to kind of next steps for both of us, we kind of decided to put together the resources we had built in our congressional campaigns, as far as, fundraising assets and mailing lists and infrastructure and people, and really try to build a PAC that solves something structural in the Democratic Party. Yeah, I was listening to your last guest, and she was talking about how hard it is to kind of organize from the ground up. My experience being a progressive running from office is it feels like every time we start a race or someone looks at all the problems we're facing and goes, I want to do my part. I want to run for office. I want to volunteer. We're all kind of starting from the ground up and trying to figure out, who do I talk to? How do I fundraise? Who are the progressives in my town? These really bread and butter issues. And then win or lose, we're leaving it for the next candidate that comes along to try to repeat all of that work. I'm a software engineer, and Jank, he loves big ideas. And I'm like, look, I want to start working on identifying who the progressives are in the country. I want to measure it with the exact same tools we do in the software industry to figure out if people are voting, if they're responding to our messages. And then I just want success to build on success. He loved that idea, and we've been working our butts off. For the last Nina Turner race, we invested well into the six figures, and we only lost by 4,266 votes, which is one of the most heartbreaking losses I've ever faced, working an election. So this time around, we have a much bigger team. We have a data analytics team. We have polling that we're doing on our own to really hone in and figure out what are the messages that people in Cleveland are responding to. And our polling has really come up with three issues that people respond to. The first, unsurprisingly, is a $15 minimum wage. The second is Medicare for all. And the third is voting rights. So then what we kind of do is we test messages and go out there and figure out from our data last time and also moving forward this time, who are the voters that are activated by these messages? And then we just deluge them. Nina Turner, $15 minimum wage. Go vote on May 3rd, May 3rd, May 3rd. And because campaigns typically target what we call triple primes, people that already vote in every single election, federal, state, and local, we target people that don't vote. We specifically target people that maybe only registered to vote to get Trump out of office and have never voted in a local election before. So we've been really effective at that. I can show you numbers that show we got 30% of the people we targeted that had never voted in a race like Nina's last time to get out there and vote. So we're just repeating that work again.
Well, I mean, I'm a terrible numbers person, but I can say that seems like the best strategy for progressive candidates because high propensity voters who are going to come out in the Democratic primary regularly, they're going to vote for the incumbent. That's the reality of the situation. You have to energize a different group to get people to oust an incumbent like this. So, is that strategy also just backed up by other organizers working on Nina Turner's campaign who might have had experience with, say, the Sanders campaign, other progressive campaigns throughout the country?
Well, we're a PAC, so we can't interact with the Nina Turner campaign. Yes. But I can say overall, that is 100% accurate. Emma, one of the things I was really surprised with moving from the software industry into like the political industry, and I mean this with all respect to people in the field, but the normie Democratic consultant class, I was really astonished by how not talented they are. Like, the kind of bread and butter people that the Democratic Party just shovels money towards. I mean, these are people that went to the Ivy League, they're paid immense salaries, and they kind of just talk to each other. They went to Harvard and Cambridge and talked to the same elites. I grew up in Mississippi, right? You want to be a progressive on hard mode, you grow up in Mississippi. So what we've really found is the elites are talking their language, right? You were just talking about with Pete Buttigieg, right? They have that very specific language. Normal working people, they want to hear about what is going to hit them in their community. They want it in plain language. I can show you numbers that say they don't like ads that look like political ads. They want stuff that is just down and to earth. The ad we had that did best last time in Nina's campaign is we hired one of the watercolorists that did ads for communities of color to encourage them to get out and go get vaccinated. And it was these beautiful, like greeting card, just images saying, look, get out there and get vaccinated. We took her work and turned it into a low budget animated cartoon, just saying Nina Turner cares about people in our community. Get out there and vote. Just through the roof, because it didn't look like a freaking political ad. And that's the kind of stuff we're trying to figure out and experiment with.
So in terms of policy messaging, you mentioned three things: voting rights, Medicare for all, and $15 minimum wage. And in the inverse, I guess, what are you seeing in terms of hesitance towards Nina Turner that maybe Chantel Brown is capitalizing on?
Look, they hit her hard with that attack. I'm not even going to repeat it on the show about Joe Biden, right? Making her seem like she's not someone invested in her community that cares about everyone. They hit her with that in what I felt was one of the most dishonest attacks I've ever seen. For me, I, with this job, have spent probably 40, 50 hours looking at speeches of Nina Turner. And I tell you, I worked a lot of races, Emma, but she is a truly once in a generation leader. I really mean that. She was on Breakfast Club with Charlemagne the God, and just speaking so eloquently and plainly about what working people are facing. That's the Nina Turner that people don't know because of all these just astonishingly dishonest attacks on her integrity. So, I think that's what makes what Rebellion does so important. You need someone out there countering that message. Nina is, to a certain extent, her campaign, this is my opinion from the outside, has to kind of fight with one hand behind her back, right? Because if she gets really aggressive, they're just going to hammer her with that same tactic again. I don't care. You can yell at me all day on Twitter. I'm Brianna Wu from Gamergate. I'm very used to getting yelled at. We are out there to do the aggressive moves that sometimes campaigns can't do themselves.
So what can people do to help support Rebellion PAC in this effort here? I mean, Cenk is going hard himself.
Ooh,
but I mean, in terms of this upcoming, you said May 3rd. That's the date.
That's
running
the
out
date.
of time a little bit here. What can people do to help?
Well, you can always donate to us by going to helptherebellion.com. One of the things I'm very proud of is if you look at our FEC statements, you can see just how much of the money we spend goes directly to the campaigns that we work on. You're not paying some lobbyist six-figure monies. I come from running an indie game studio, so producing this stuff in really cost-effective ways, it just is second nature to me. I'm not going to pay some, ad creative agency, $20,000 to produce an ad. I can do it for $3,000 or $4,000 myself. If you're there, I'm just going to repeat Nina Turner's line. If you're in Cleveland and you believe in her line, she needs talent, time, and treasure. So if you don't want to support us, go help Nina. But this is a really, really important race. And Emma, if I could just close with saying one thing to everyone watching Majority Report. When I watch the show, I feel like there's a real theme with the callers that we are all looking at everything going on in the world, and we're asking, what can we do to help this? How can we turn this around? We see the American ship sinking. For me, I decided to run for office, and it taught me certain skills. Even though I didn't win, it taught me compliance, it taught me fundraising, it taught me get out the vote, taught me NGP. It gave me this basis of skills. And my message out there to anyone listening wanting to make a difference is get out there, volunteer for a campaign, run yourself. Even if you lose, you are going to develop skills that are critical for the progressive movement. Every race we don't win, we still get people that are stronger. Progressives have the right ideas. What we lack is infrastructure to actually get elected. That's what I'm interested in building. It's what Cenk is interested in building. It's what I would love to do alongside you.
Appreciate it so much. Appreciate you for coming on, Brianna Wu of Rebellion PAC. Thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, folks. With that, we are going to wrap up the first hour of this program, head into the fun half. Take your calls, although we do have a ton of funny clips today, so we'll see how much we get to. 646-257-3920. But first, Matt, what's happening on Left Reckoning tonight?
Tonight we got Elias Cepeda on. We're going to be talking about a couple things squad and anti-squad related, but also talking about UFC and the cultural issues inherent there. Elias is an expert MMA guy himself. Actually, has done some of the fighting, and I don't know if he still does it, but and so we'll be talking about that. I don't know much about Dana White and all that stuff, but from what I gather, not a great guy.
Right.
And so we'll be discussing that this evening at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Patreon.com/leftreckoning to get the post game.
646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now. And I don't think it's going to be the same as it looks like in 6 months from now. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better 6 months from now than it is 3 months from now. But I think around 18 months out, we're going to look back and go like, wow. What? What is that going on? It's nuts. Wait a second. Hold on for a second.
The Majority Report.
Emma, welcome to the program.
Hey.
Matt.
What is up, everyone?
Nomiki.
You did it.
Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Bradley, you want to say hello?
Sorry to disappoint everyone. I'm just a random guy.
It's all the boys today.
Fundamentally false.
No, I'm sorry. Women's...
Stop talking for a second. Now let me finish.
Where is this coming from, dude?
But dude, you want to smoke this 7A?
Yes.
Hi, me? Is it?
Yes.
Is this me?
Is it me?
It is you.
Is this me? Hello? Is this me?
I think it is you. Who is you? No sound. Every single freaking day. What's on your mind?
Sports. We can discuss free markets and we can discuss capitalism.
I'm gonna go start watching.
Libertarians.
They're so stupid, though.
Common sense says, of course.
Gobbledygook.
We fucking nailed him.
So what's 79 plus 21?
Challenge Matt.
I'm positively quivering. I believe 96, I want to say.
857-210-35-501. 1/2. 3/8.
9/11, for instance.
$3,400, $1,900.
654 $3 trillion sold. It's a zero-sum game.
Actually, you're making me think less of it.
But let me say this. Poop.
You can call it satire. Sam goes with satire.
On top of it all,
Yeah.
my favorite part about you is just like every day, all day, like
Yeah.
everything you do.
Without a doubt. Hey, buddy, we see you. All right, folks.
It's just the week being weeded out, obviously.
Yeah, sun's out, guns out. I don't know.
But you should know.
People just don't like to entertain ideas anymore.
I have a question. Who cares?
Our chat is enabled, folks.
I love it.
I do love that.
Look, gotta jump. Gotta be quick. I gotta jump.
I'm losing it, bro.
2 o'clock. We're already late, and the guy's being a dick. So screw him. Sent to a gulag?
Outrageous.
Like, what is wrong with you?
Love you, bye.
Love you. Bye-bye.
We are back. We are back. And this is the fun half of the Majority Report on the day of the hump. Chris Burdick, you know how competitive Sam is. Now that Bradley has COVID, Sam's going to try to get double COVID. Good point. North Dakota Llama. Emma, have you heard of Christian Watson out of North Dakota State? Yes. Solid receiver with good hands. Hope he gets picked up in the 4th round. Dude, he's going before the 4th round. He's going before the 4th round.
It's just wild to me that NDSU has guys that go like Carson Wentz.
Yeah.
Because and there's
it says
a guy,
hopefully he doesn't turn into another Carson Wentz. That was the end of the
yeah. But like that school, I went to college in Fargo as well, where NDSU is. I went across the river to Minnesota State, but it's interesting to me because they were always very, very good in their division, whatever it is, and winning national championships. But like it always seemed that they were doing that because they were playing low, like in divisional standards or whatever. They weren't playing against like Notre Dame or Florida or whatever. But they had like Jim Kleinsasser. I don't know if you remember him.
No.
He was like this beast, a tight end fullback guy. But yeah, like now that they just have guys going in the draft, it's crazy to me.
Yeah, it's not they don't seem to have any real guys coming out that are like strong offensive lineman or defensive lineman, but like they had Trey Lance go to go to San Francisco, who I don't think is going to be good, unfortunately. But this receiver, Christian Watson, I think he's a second round talent. That's from my. I would be very happy if the Giants got him, although I think they need speed as opposed to he's fast though. He's 6'4" and he's really fast. Sam's hanging Chad. Emma, I'm pretty sure I remembered you guys covering the story in the past, but I want to remind everyone that Melissa Lucio is scheduled to be executed in Texas a week from today. She's the woman who was convicted of murder of her daughter after she fell down the stairs. Cops coerced and pressured her into a confession. Evidence was omitted and key witnesses not put on the stand. Numerous Republican politicians in Texas also calling for her execution to be called off. MR fans, please sign the petition for the Innocence Project and other organizations. Make whatever noise you can on social media towards Texas representatives to stop this execution. Okay, I will do that. I need to read up on that case a little bit more. Thank you for the tip.
I would, yeah, that's a good tip. I'm not too familiar with that case. I would recommend on the topic of Texas policing, though, a documentary called "The Confession Killer." It's on Netflix. It's about how Texas Rangers, like just insane corruption among Texas Rangers, where they had this guy who started confessing to all these murders, basically to like stay out of prison longer, and like, hey, you need me, right? I need to, I'll confess to more murders. And the Texas Rangers looked at it as an opportunity to close every unsolved murder case that they never solved. So they just made him like the #1 serial killer of all time, including like multiple places, like he could have been two places at the same time, and places like cops from all around the country realized, hey, we have unsolved murders, we can just go down to Texas and
pin him on this guy.
and this guy will say he did it. Yeah, and then the lengths that those Texas Rangers went to cover up their what they were actually doing, like it is a lawless gang, and we say that a lot, like that, you know, LA has the problem with like the murder gangs and stuff like that, but it is a huge problem for democracy what's going on with our police.
Yes. I mean, there are a lot of crimes. So this is why, you know, being blanketly anti-criminalization, being against cash bail, is the right thing, because you got to understand how widespread this is with cops. They want to close their cases, and they will go the easiest route to do that. And it doesn't matter, like the police work you see in The Night Of or other TV shows, it's a myth.
Yeah, they do it, and they do all this sort of you know, horrible stuff under the cover of it's a really tough job, you know, give them the benefit of the doubt. And we've done that for, I don't know, a century plus now, and it just leads to abuse and popular will hating the police that just never seems to be accurately addressed.
Emma's vape pen. Happy 420 to all. I've been more on the edible train recently. And the flower. Sean from Maryland. Hey, Emma, Matt. Thanks for all the reporting on that you all your reporting on and that you do. Y'all feel like friends I've never met, and I appreciate y'all. Just want to emphasize that honestly, people really need to understand that we can never rely on Dems to save us, especially in light of Biden's weakness on COVID. We should continue to vote for the lesser evil. It's very easy to vote, but everyone should be prioritizing organizing if you have the time and ability. Yes, join your DSA chapter, support unions in your area, build relationships with members of your communities. Ultimately, people in communal power will save us. We got to get to work. Train Boy, Amtrak has been failing poorly under Mayo Pete's leadership. South Bend got a new Amtrak station, though. And there's a silver lining. Snooze and Sarandon. Visiting my MAGA parents' house, and they have the Trump Picture album. It costs $75. These people are just cash cows for the right wing, all going according to plan.
I mean, it's beautiful to charge $75 for it. It's the best color printing you've ever seen.
I'm very much against coffee tables because of their price in and of themselves.
Coffee table books?
Coffee table books. Yes.
Right.
Because why? They're always over like $50 for, I don't know, the ones that I've seen, and I've got them as gifts, and that's just, I use my coffee table to eat dinner. I don't need a book there.
I mean, I think they're good souvenirs from like museums or something like that. Like, they have like the what's in the museum and more description. But yeah, it also, ultimately I just end up spilling soup on them.
Matt's Dealer just finished Good Lord Bird with Ethan Hawke. Good watch for 420. Hawke is amazing.
Interesting. That's the Ethan Hawke show where he plays John Brown, if memory serves.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and
he kind of looks like John Brown.
I could see that, and I liked the first episode, but I got turned off a little bit by it because I like my John Brown to be like the John Brown in the novel Cloud Splitter, which is just like a crazy sort of like a prophet sort of fellow. And Good Lord Birdie's sort of that, but it's a little bit more humorous. And I think that is probably a good show. I just didn't watch it because, I only have room for one fictionalized John Brown.
Friend of Sam, Emma, what do you have to say about social justice warriors reacting so badly to Ethan Klein and his poor joke on LGBTQ gay men? They literally canceled him and threatened the advertisers for almost nothing. He is your friend. I don't know him. And a friend of Sam, and I'm surprised you haven't stood by him at all. None of you. And then the next I am, Shower with Crowder. Big fan here. Got to know about you when Sam and Ethan Klein exposed Crowder. I am disappointed, but to see Ethan by himself now, when none of you or Sam Seder or other fellow influencers have said nothing to defend his pro-LGBTQ approach and values. Guys, I don't know what the hell is going on.
Yeah, I literally thought you were talking about Ethan Hawke still, the guy who played Good Lord Bird. But Ethan Klein, yeah.
I like Ethan.
I don't know what he said, but...
I think we've maybe like spoken over Twitter GM a few times, and that's the extent of my relationship with Ethan. I have no idea what's going on here, but he seems like a good guy, and I hope he doesn't get canceled if it's not too bad.
Yeah, and it seems like he has shown a capacity for growth from what the little I know about him. Maybe this is a moment for that. I don't know, but I haven't heard about this emergency.
Me
I think we might need to check our emergency strobe light that turns on whenever something like this happens, but I was unaware of this.
It's broken. The big red light in the middle of the studio that alerts us to any drama involving Ethan Klein. It's just like we need to work troubleshoot.
Like it's like even like Hassan. Like I like Hassan. I've met him in person, but like I like when there's like a new trending Hassan sort of scandal. It's like, guys, that's what the trending topics are for.
Yeah, right.
At it.
We outsource it to the Twitter trending topic algorithm. Dave from Jamaica, my fellow IMers touch grass. Well said. All right, let's do this clip. This went viral, I guess yesterday. This is on the Michigan Senate floor. State Senator Mallory McMorrow had to respond, and I think, or she didn't have to. A lot of lawmakers wouldn't.
Yeah, I think she sort of refreshingly responded with just like putting these little creeps where they belong.
Because one of her colleagues, Senator Dana Thies, not sure how to pronounce it, but she is a Republican in the state Senate in Michigan as well. And she has been fundraising off of Senator McMorrow's pro-LGBTQ rhetoric, which is now under attack, calling her a groomer of children, which is just like, all right, going straight for the most insane and offensive accusation. And some Democrats are just like, all right, they're crazies. I'm going to let this slide. But McMorrow here did not.
Thank you, Mr. President. I didn't expect to wake up yesterday to the news that the senator from the 22nd district had overnight accused me by name of grooming and sexualizing children in an email fundraising for herself. So I sat on it for a while wondering why me. And then I realized, because I am the biggest threat to your hollow, hateful scheme. Because you can't claim that you are targeting marginalized kids in the name of, quote, parental rights if another parent is standing up to say no. So then what? Then you dehumanize and marginalize me. You say that I'm one of them. You say she's a groomer. She supports pedophilia. She wants children to believe that they were responsible for slavery and to feel bad about themselves because they're white. Well, here's a little bit of background about who I really am. Growing up, my family was very active in our church. I sang in the choir. My mom taught CCD. One day, our priest called a meeting with my mom and told her that she was not living up to the church's expectations and that she was disappointing. My mom asked why. Among other reasons, she was told it was because she was divorced and because the priest didn't see her at Mass every Sunday. So where was my mom on Sundays? She was at the soup kitchen with me. My mom taught me at a very young age that Christianity and faith was about being part of a community, about recognizing our privilege and blessings and doing what we can to be of service to others, especially people who are marginalized, targeted, and who had less, often unfairly. I learned that service was far more important than performative nonsense like being seen in the same pew every Sunday or writing Christian in your Twitter bio and using that as a shield to target and marginalize already marginalized people. I also stand on the shoulders of people like Father Ted Hesburgh, the longtime president of the University of Notre Dame, who was active in the civil rights movement, who recognized his power and privilege as a white man, a faith leader, and the head of an influential and well-respected institution, and who saw Black people in this country being targeted and discriminated against and beaten, and reached out to lock arms with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. when he was alive, when it was unpopular and risky, and marching alongside them to say, "We've got you," to offer protection and service and allyship to try to right the wrongs and fix injustice in the world. So who am I? I am a straight, white, Christian, married, suburban mom who knows that the very notion that learning about slavery or redlining or systemic racism somehow means that children are being taught to feel bad or hate themselves because they are white is absolute nonsense. No child alive today is responsible for slavery. No one in this room is responsible for slavery. But each and every single one of us bears responsibility for writing the next chapter of history. Each and every single one of us decides what happens next and how we respond to history and the world around us. We are not responsible for the past. We also cannot change the past. We can't pretend that it didn't happen or deny people their very right to exist. I am a straight, white, Christian, married, suburban mom. I want my daughter to know that she is loved, supported, and seen for whoever she becomes. I want her to be curious, empathetic, and kind. People who are different are not the reason that our roads are in bad shape after decades of disinvestment, or that healthcare costs are too high, or that teachers are leaving the profession. I want every child in this state to feel seen, heard, and supported, not marginalized and targeted because they are not straight, white, and Christian. We cannot let hateful people tell you otherwise, to scapegoat and deflect from the fact that they are not doing anything to fix the real issues that impact people's lives. And I know that hate will only win if people like me stand by and let it happen. So I want to be very clear right now. Call me whatever you want. I hope you brought in a few dollars. I hope it made you sleep good last night. I know who I am. I know what faith and service means and what it calls for in this moment. We will not let hate win.
Boom. Like, I mean, did she even take a breath? It was like it was so good. And that's the concept that, yes, children today are not responsible for slavery, or that is the straw man that the right sets up. The fact that she blew it over aggressively so is helpful because it reframes the conversation. But we do, as she said, have a responsibility for how we teach that history in the present.
Well, yeah, she makes a good point when she says we need to write the next chapter, and you can't write the next chapter without an understanding of what happened in the previous chapters, because otherwise you start writing this chapter and you start having to ask these questions like, hey, why are certain groups more economically and civilly or less economically and civilly secure than other groups. I guess we'll just not address that, right? Well, it's
Yeah.
because we have inheritances off, like literal financial inheritances from these unequal times that have basically been baked into the structure of this stuff. So I mean, she's obviously right, and that's the exact, this is the energy we need to be directing at these like sort of Chris Rufo freaks, is they are just sniveling little um uh cowards or freaks that want to mythologize history and act like any sort of challenge to that is some sort of self exercise in self-hate, as opposed to just understanding the world that you live in and the community, like she says, that you're trying to help.
A denial of inheritance also leads to the exact kinds of divisions that help right-wing politicians, because when you don't have an understanding of that inheritance, what do you think about why Black people are poorer in this country than white people on average?
This is why you have to start talking about the bell curve when it comes to Black people, or you need Charles Murray, like, again, to come up and start having cultural
Yes.
pathologies that explain it.
Black
besides
culture
that.
makes them inherently less they're not able to fit into society
Yeah.
in the same way.
It's
They
'cause-
don't have the IQ that white people do.
Yeah.
Right.
It's because they sag their pants.
They train that this kind of thinking trains racism. It makes it it's a much more fertile soil for racism, and that's the exact reason why Republicans in this country are capitalizing on this. And I also want to make this other point too. I, I've evolved on my atheism because one, in part by talking to Michael a little bit, but two, the religion is not the problem in and of itself. It is the use of religion to exacerbate inequities and further bigotry. And casting aside people who are religious and who may have faith means you're also casting aside people like Mallory McMorrow's mother, who was at a soup kitchen.
Yeah. And particularly, like, the big problem is it is about the community, and particularly, like, and I haven't really believed in God my entire adult life, but I also am aware of, like, the sort of direction that New Atheism took, basically being a a sort of defender of American foreign policy in the Middle East,
Yeah.
basically saying that Muslims are Islamofascists, they all want to be Hitler
Primitive,
because of
need
the
to be
Quran.
democratized.
Yeah, and like that was clearly an awful thing, and I think a big problem with atheism, and that I think most atheists, if they're honest with themselves, understand, is like it does what you do with withdraw from the community there, and for a lot of people that's fine, because that community isn't that great, right? There's a lot of homophobia and stuff like that in certain churches, so like I understand like not wanting to go to the specific community that modern churches provide, yet community is still important, and to the extent that religion survives for as long, it's because it actually does sort of have those things has the community element a part of it, and of course, like the power justification part of it is another reason it survives from the powerful, but the reason people like it is because of the community part
Because
of it.
right, in the absence of actual infrastructure in this country and social safety nets that provide for people, I mean, like, who are we to say, and I know this is a little off topic, but that a church can't provide a similar function for people than, say, some of the social programs that, like, the Black Panthers were trying to build in the 60s for their cities. I mean, it's a different situation, but like when these are community-based social safety nets in a society that casts aside everybody and provides you with no health care and no wages and stuff. I think it's an arrogant perspective from a lot of like big city liberal atheists to claim that these are all inherently wrong.
Yeah, I mean, atheists should have their own soup kitchens if Richard Dawkins was serious about organizing like 10 years ago or whatever. I mean, there is the problem with the sort of like long-term problem with having churches take care of this stuff is they start to get patriarchal about saving souls and stuff like
Yes,
that. And
yes.
so you don't want to have right, like are they going to help a gay person or a trans person ex-church? Like, who knows about that?
Totally. No, I know.
But yeah, like the register she's speaking in is exactly right, and really impressive, I think.
I agree. My point is just broad strokes discounting of churches and religious organizations within smaller communities, frankly, sometimes comes off as elitist kind of touch.
Yeah, it's like it's because it's like you're only going halfway. You're realizing like the limitations of these things without realizing that you need to have something to replace it with.
Right. Will from Indiana. Senator McMorrow seems like if Shiv Roy gained a soul. As a ginger, I'm allowed to make that joke. In all seriousness, though, absolutely great speech, and she really outlined what we can do to stop the right-wing mindset of what American society should be and write a better future, as she said so well. Left is best. Lurking Prophet. Atheists do have their own soup kitchen, and they don't proselytize to people in exchange for food. Okay.
Do they though?
I was about to say.
Like, I mean, I'm certain there is probably some limited ones, but not to the extent that organized religion does. I mean, if atheists have organized even a fraction of the like soup kitchens as like even the Catholic Church has, I'll be very impressed, and I'd like to hear about it, but I'm skeptical.
DNC Google pundit Sam will appreciate this one. Instead of putting an expensive book on my coffee table, I put awesome Bang and Olufsen stereo catalogs from the 80s there instead. Tweeter, etc. was the shit back in the day, dude. I hope you laminate them. That's like if people are putting their oily fingers on those are antiques, brother. Aaron is not cool. First, no AOC on the show. And now silence on H3. Are you guys even leftists? Sarah from Arkansas. I have this beautiful book on sourdough baking that I keep on my coffee table. Always inspires me to try new recipes, and the writing is excellent, filled with high resolution pictures. I see it as a mix of learning, inspiration, and art. I that sounds lovely, and I'm sorry for besmirching coffee tables in general. Ray says, Debo Samuel trade, Emma. I think it's just a play for new contract, which he deserves. And he should get every cent of it and not play until he gets a new contract, because that idiot team, and I'm sorry, I actually root for the 49ers because I like Kyle Shanahan so much. Frankly, this Trey Lance trade is going to go down as such a disaster. The locker room is still behind Jimmy Garoppolo. He's making like what, $28 million a year. They could cut him tomorrow, but they're too stubborn. They want to trade him, and they need that money to pay guys like Debo Samuel, who's actually contributing to the team. But they put themselves in a pickle here by trading so many assets for a project quarterback who I don't think is going to be very good. He knuckleballs constantly coming out of his hand. It's just it does not throw a catchable ball. But anyway, you want to do this Bill O'Reilly thing?
I like this Bill O'Reilly.
Okay. Bill O'Reilly has reemerged. Here he is at the JetBlue counter. It's all good. But which airport is this at? I guess it doesn't really matter. I think he's a product of Long Island, though.
Apparently, he's going to Turks and Caicos.
Naturally.
I can maybe look up a little bit more on this. JFK.
And he totally Karen'd on this JetBlue employee.
It's Bill O'Reilly. Bill O'Reilly and Pat Fry want to see a manager.
No, what you're going to do is 3 hours waiting now. No. You're going to find out. You look at this. You want me to find You're trying to move violence. No, I'm not. You're the one. I dare you. Is that what you said? Okay. You get that information. You're going to lose your job. You're going to lose your job. Okay. We'll see.
Good to know he's still a cantankerous bully. He loves getting in people's faces. Damn. that sense of entitlement, it's that's thicker. Blood is thicker than water. Well, his entitlement is thicker than his blood. That's gonna like remain until he dies. That's the soul, a cloud of entitlement that leaves his body when he drops into hell.
I'm impressed. Yeah, like he was upright. I mean, I don't know if he could have passed a sobriety test entirely, but the one of just standing and bitching a guy out, I because he looked like he was declining fast when I saw any clip of him, and you know, it looks like he's got a little vigor left in him.
That's his energy source is bullying people. That's how he.
You're gonna lose your job.
Yeah. So.
Like you did.
Right.
Anyway.
He's like, and I would know.
I know about losing jobs.
He I could go off about the airlines right now, but this is why we need more regulation of this massive industry in this country.
It's the redundancy. They fired off all their workers. Now they can't get the planes off the ground. Yeah, left wing Bill O'Reilly.
Yeah, left wing Bill. That could be something. Yeah. What did he what did he scream on air? We'll do it live.
Fuck it. Fucking thing sucks. We'll do it live.
We'll do it live, yeah. We'll take off now. Fucking thing sucks.
What does that mean to play us out? Yeah, I know a lot of that. That's an all-time meltdown.
All time. Speaking of right-wingers melting down, that's not really a good transition because this is not a meltdown. Ted Cruz cannot help but project his weird sexual proclivities onto the rest of the world. Here he is speaking at the Verdict conference here. Hold on, I have a little bit more information about this. But regardless, he's talking about Disney not sufficiently supporting the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida. And here's what he hopes. Just kidding. But here's what he says will now be Disney's content.
I think there are people who are misguided trying to drive, Disney stepping in saying, in every episode now they're going to have, Mickey and Pluto going at it. Like, really?
Thank you for that image, Senator.
But it's just like, come on, guys. Like these are kids, and you can only shift
just for me. Yeah.
Ted Cruz, famous porn liker. But this is so interesting as a sort of a conservative observational comedy styling of say a thing that's not happening and then be like, I mean, come on, guys, we're gonna make every Disney thing into porno now. No, like this is exactly the problem. It's that like any sort of hint that like if you draw a crowd in Pixar, you need to draw a man and a woman, a man and a woman, a man and a woman. They can only be paired up together. If you have anyone like in the crowd, like say a man hugging a man in celebration of like a crowd, like a basketball game win or something like that, that's like basically Mickey and Pluto going at it. Ted Cruz says. And
that was even too far for Michael Knowles there. Did you see? He was like, oh,
thanks
whoa.
for that image. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that image, right? Even he's not depraved enough to be thinking up these things, but maybe Ted Cruz thought that he'd have an applause line there.
And then they still go through the whole thing of like acting as if it's a joke, but it's true though. Like it's a weird gray area.
I think there are people who are misguided trying to drive, Disney stepping in saying, in every episode now they're going to have, Mickey and Pluto going at it. Like, really?
Thank you for that image, Senator.
But it's just like, come on, guys. Like these are kids, and you can always shift to Cinemax if you want that. Like why do you have? It used to be. Look, I'm a dad. Like you used to.
Sorry about that, folks. I forgot to.
It's okay. It's fine, but we don't need to see anymore. I think we got the gist.
Enough, yeah.
Don't like thinking about Ted Cruz.
Liking porn on his official account.
No. All right, let's take a call. Calling from a 651 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello?
Hello.
Oh, hi.
Hi. Who's this?
This is Mariana from Minneapolis area.
Mariana from Minneapolis. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi. I actually meant to call in about this sort of yesterday, but you know how the phone lines are. So it's kind of in regards to yesterday's interview
Okay.
with the environmentalist. Yeah, I was just kind of curious on your perspective about conversations about how individuals can affect environmental change because as someone who's been really into like environmental activism since I was in middle school, like I went vegan in middle school and then not and all that stuff, mostly for animal rights and environmental reasons. I've kind of like went back and forth on this question a lot, especially talking to leftists. Sometimes I get a bit frustrated. Sorry, I'm kind of
No, it's
a
okay.
little anxious.
You
So,
know, I think I've been open about how emphasizing individual action is, I think, the wrong tactic for the environmental movement because it's insufficient and it's also um, alienating. But in terms of your own actions, uh, go at it. I mean, there are a variety of ways that you can reduce your carbon footprint. You can change your diet. You can alter your diet. Some people I know, my dad's an older guy, but he's trying to be more conscious, and I think it's hard to wean him off meat entirely, but he'll only have meat for dinner, and he'll have n- non-meat products for breakfast and lunch. That's just one example in my personal life of somebody that's trying to be a little more conscious in that area.
yeah, I guess from my kind of current perspective now, it's almost like I almost feel like making some environmental changes like as to lifestyle and stuff is almost more of a like philosophical thing. I guess I'll try to quickly explain. Like the just the feeling of doing nothing in itself is almost like defeatist. So it to me it's like the idea of you make no difference, therefore do nothing, is almost kind of antithetical to leftism. I know there is no ethical consumption under capitalism, etc. And while that's true, I think a lot of times people say that as kind of a cop out to like, well, I'm not going to do anything because it's going to be useless anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And how I think just it sounds weird, but it can actually kind of like help your state of mind when you feel like you're making some small changes, even when you do recognize that it's not really making a difference. Just because I think oftentimes when people say, well, we need systemic changes, which I agree, they don't really push for that. Like, as someone who's been involved in animal rights for a decade, I see all these vegan food technologies and stuff, and that's great, but like animal product consumption hasn't gone down. Maybe more people are drinking soy milk, etc., but like still more milk is being produced than ever and stuff. I just don't, to be honest, realistically see until climate catastrophe makes it literally impossible to produce a lot of these items that we'll see a reduction in any of these things. Like, there's no incentive for dairy subsidies to disappear when the lobby is so powerful. And the only way I really think you'd be able to curb consumption is like really regulating those markets. And I don't really know how that's going to happen, especially when many of the crops that are fed to animals are also subsidized. So like corn, wheat, etc. You might say, well, people can eat those, but not really the type that are grown in the vast majority of the country. Like I live in a kind of agricultural town, and most of that stuff's just grown for like the pigs, cows, and sheep here to eat. Like, it's not stuff that's really fit for human consumption, at least currently. So I just don't know how that shift will occur. And science, it's just makes me very disillusioned.
I
So,
totally get it.
Sorry,
Now look.
Sorry, I'm kind of rambling.
No, it's okay. Look, I do not discourage anybody from making an individual decision about their own consumption. So if you want to encourage that in your regular life, and if you want to do that yourself, I think you go at it. My point is from an activist perspective, I think it's insufficient, and it's insufficient in emphasis.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like from a media perspective, it's
media.
very insidious, like who will emphasize the individual sort of solutions to all this. And I think what you're saying, Mariana, about just the sort of good that it does a person to act on what they want to see in the world, I think that is really valid, and I think that's why people should not be afraid to do something that isn't going to like solve climate change, for instance, entirely. But as far as like that's why we lean on the emphasis here, because I don't even really eat beef at all anymore, and I eat a lot less meat. I'll do at least one meatless day a week, and I think like those sorts of things, and that is basically entirely, I mean, I guess there's some diet issues that are concerns there, but it's mainly for the climate. And I think that stuff is good to do. It's just like it's not something you want to sell.
All right, but we gotta let you go, Mariana. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
I just like to say I really appreciate the perspective you take on that stuff. So thanks for taking my call.
Of course. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye. All right, let's do another clip here. Do you want to do this Jesse Waters thing? All right, let's see. I'll unfortunately, Jesse Waters' wife is named Emma. His second wife.
He's been married twice.
Yes, I believe that. I could be wrong. This second wife was an intern at Fox.
Okay.
So keep that in mind. And I swear this is not as gossipy as it sounds, because he volunteered this information on air, and it's scary.
When I was trying to get Emma to date me,
Oh,
first thing
Jesus
I did,
fucking Christ.
I let the air out of her tires. She couldn't go anywhere. She needed a
Wait,
lift.
I'm sorry,
I said,
go
hey,
back.
You need a lift?
Go back. I talked over it. I just, hearing my name come out of his mouth gave me agita.
When I was trying to get Emma to date me, first thing I did, I let the air out of her tires. She couldn't go anywhere. She needed a lift. I said, hey, you need a lift? She hopped right in the car.
Does she know this story?
No, she doesn't know the story.
Does she watch your
Now
show?
She does.
Jesse Jr. does for you.
You're basically the Zodiac killer. It has a happy ending.
Really?
Yes, we're married.
Did
you really do that?
Is that the first time you did it, or did you use that before?
It works like a charm.
Oh, okay. Kathy Lee Gifford joins us now.
People miss that.
When I was trying to get Emma.
Okay, so this clip is a little older for earlier in the month, but it just came to our attention here because they were talking about how climate activists were advocating for people to deflate tires, or I don't know, whatever niche story that they found. He goes, actually, I'm in favor of that, but in order to trick my now wife, who is more than 10 years my junior, into going on a date with me, I'm going to deflate her tires so her car can't go anywhere, and she'll have to turn to me, the knight in shining armor, for a ride.
And then what? Like, when do you fill the tires back up? That is psychopathic. Gutfeld's instinct is right. Like, if a guy is willing to do that sort of thing, to be like, hey, do you want a ride? Well, he gave her a ride then?
I guess, yeah. I guess that's what the romantic
what do you get out of
story
that?
is.
That's the romantic thing, is you dropped her off somewhere? Wow.
No, the romantic thing is like, look at the length that I went to actually cause you pretty significant inconvenience by taking the air out of your tires in I guess, a parking garage
And
at
wait,
Fox News.
so they,
So you'd be
yeah.
stranded and dependent on me.
Whoa.
Frankly, that is, we understand that Ryan Grimm has punched Jesse Waters. We don't advocate for violence
But
here
he
on
had
this
it coming.
program, but that's all I'll say.
That's remarkable. So yeah, because when I told the story, I've forgotten the intern angle. I was thinking like they'd been on. So they have no interpersonal.
We don't know. I don't know.
It seems very strange.
I mean, frankly, this is like really predatory behavior
Yeah.
that it triggers me a little bit. I haven't experienced this, but I know friends that have experienced these things. I have friends that had tried to block ex's numbers, and the guy would track them on their running app, like the Nike running app and things like that. Other aggressive actions, showing up places, forcing them to see them, etc. Like, this is toxic masculinity personified, and it's fine because we had a happy ending. But think about how terrifying that would be for a woman. You ostensibly have, I don't really know the circumstances of the situation, but I'm gonna get rid of your ability to travel and be independent and go somewhere on your own in your own car. So you are dependent upon me.
And then I'll be there. That is
And this is
insane.
like this is what bothers me about what I think people don't understand about what toxic masculinity is. It is not respecting the agency of the woman that you're with if you're in a heterosexual relationship in this way. Because a woman can decide if she's interested in you, Jesse Waters. You don't have to trick her through creepy means, taking air out of their the tires to trick her into liking you. It
When
does
you
not
have a wife, not that
when
that
you have a
matters,
wife,
but
right?
I just wanted just to
Point that out.
Yeah, draw some just to draw the cartoon out here a little bit. He is married at this time.
We're unclear, but we do know that his second wife.
I'm looking at suggest.com, which I admit is probably not maybe the most
and we have heard this from Nomi anecdotally, some stories about this.
But yeah, so this is from suggest.com. Waters is currently married to Emma Giovini, but she's not his first wife. The Fox News star was first linked to Noel Inguatiato. The pair met at Fox News, with Inguati working at the marketing department of Waters on Bill O'Reilly's show. The pair married in 2009, shared twin daughters. However, it wasn't happily ever after for the couple. In 2017, Waters admitted to having an affair with Emma DiGiovine, an associate producer on his show. Waters reported their relationship
on his show.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
So he's her boss.
Boss. Yep. Waters reported their relationship to the Fox News HR department, and DiGiovine was moved from his show to the Ingram angle. Wow.
So your boss is romantically interested in you, lets the air out of your tires, so you have to get a ride with him, and we're supposed to pretend that this is like normal.
And this is the guy.
Family values for the conservative host.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. This is the guy who is basically doing QAnon style moral alarmism at people.
Super creepy. All right, I want to do this. Damn, what do we have? Do you want to get into JD Vance? Because I have a Politico printout about how much more money Peter Thiel is pouring into his campaign, but it's not particularly new information. That's just kind of all we've got. Or we could talk about this insane, unhinged Tucker Carlson monologue about the libs of TikTok thing.
Let's do this Tucker thing.
All right. For people who may not be aware of this story, reporter Taylor Lorenz wrote a story in the Washington Post where she investigated the account Libs of TikTok, which is in the business of essentially widely publicizing social media posts by gay and LGBTQ, queer, trans teachers.
And calling them mentally ill and saying they should be fired.
Saying they're groomers. And in some cases, according to Taylor's reporting, working with government officials in Florida, part of DeSantis's team, to make that happen. So this account is in the business of trying to make teachers lose their jobs based on their sexual orientation. And
I would say is actually contributing to an environment that might lead to even worse consequences than firing for teachers in the form of actual violence.
Yes.
Because he's calling these people groomers and mentally ill, and that is saying it's dangerous for them to be in charge of your children.
Right, exactly. And yet the free speech warriors like Glenn Greenwald and Tucker Carlson
Greenwald's had a total conniption over this.
are having a conniption. Yeah. I mean, by the way, I thought that they were all up in arms about people losing their jobs over not getting vaccinated, but they seem to be fine with gay teachers losing their jobs for their sexual orientation. And the fact that this account, the holder of this account, was named in the article, which was easily accessible. And I believe she hung up on Taylor Lorenz when Taylor was trying to get her to comment on this. So she had the opportunity to respond, but chose not to. And apparently this is the free speech crisis of the modern era, according to Tucker and Greenwald and others.
Why hasn't Taylor Lorenz at the very least registered under the Foreign Agent Registration Act, FARA? We seem to remember quite a bit of talk about this over the last few years. We think there was an impeachment trial over it. Someone went to prison because of it. But Taylor Lorenz can take information from a foreign government to crush an American citizen, clearly as part of an intel operation. And she's a journalist in good standing at the Jeff Bezos' news.
I don't know what he's talking about.
He's so like bathed in irony and grievance that it's like, what do you want then? Like, do you think this fair stuff is bullshit, or do you think your only problem is the hypocrisy of it? I mean, he says, let's keep it playing.
Newspaper? Lots of questions here. We hope we can get to the bottom of all of them. We're going to start tonight by talking to the creator of Libs of TikTok, who joins us right now by phone. And we appreciate your coming on. So I just have to ask, because I'm really interested, why do you suppose the German government wanted to shut down your Twitter feed?
Well, I think that what I'm doing is very effective, and I think that a lot of people wanted to shut me down. They wanted to intimidate me into silence, and unfortunately for them, that's just never going to happen.
Well, I'm grateful to hear.
I should just note she is not on video. I'm sure she could have been, but she doesn't want to be on, so she's still going to stay anonymous.
Ah, interesting.
Hear that you're not intimidated. Were you a little surprised to see, of all people, Taylor Lorenz, who complained bitterly when we used her name on the air several months ago, who whined and cried on television because she had PTSD because people were criticizing her online? Were you surprised that it was her who came after you personally and tried to destroy your life?
Yeah, I thought that was really humorous. It added a really nice layer of humor on top of the whole story.
You sound like you're laughing.
And I think that the fact that it was Taylor Lorenz, who is a known, hypocrite, and she is known to dox people, the fact that it was her that was doing all this, I think it just helps people rally with support for me.
Brilliant interview.
Have you noticed? I mean, I know you're not a psychiatrist, or perhaps you are. I don't know who you are. But are you surprised?
She's a real estate broker.
She's, yes, and frankly, she's a conservative, religious, Orthodox Jew here in Brooklyn who, I mean, is clearly some sort of like theocrat, and that's why she's against gay people like this, and that's what the free speech that's being protected here.
Well, I mean,
but it's not free speech. That's the point.
No, I mean, it's pro bono work for right-wing messaging,
Yes.
which is what
she's getting
how Glenn Greenwald got his start. So he loves to dive in for that stuff.
And there is an update to this story that it seems like she was getting payment from the Babylon Bee, among other right-wing publications. So apparently, it's doxing that it is revealed in a news article that you are being paid by a right-wing media organization to do right-wing media.
I mean, maybe Glenn can give her a spot on the Substack.
And by the way, I tried to just investigate what he's talking about with this German payment to her. He's making a massive logical leap because the German government decided to shut down this account. It must mean
Because
that
it's a hate account.
Right.
I'm sorry, fuck this account. It should be shut down. It's posted people's TikToks to a bunch of bigots and saying this person is mentally ill. Yeah, I wouldn't have that on my social media account either, and I think it's disgraceful. All the people that are thrown in for.
Yeah, and by the way, so okay, no, just keep going. Actually,
Psychiatrist, or perhaps you are. I don't know who you are. But are you surprised that the people who are the most deeply enmeshed in narcissism, who talk about themselves the most, are also capable of the greatest cruelty? Have you noticed that trend?
Yes, I've noticed that a lot. I've noticed it with a lot of TikToks as well. I think it's a little bit of a trend on the left.
Yeah. I obsess over myself, so I'm willing to hurt you. So what's your status as, since we have you on the phone, how are you doing tonight? You don't need to tell us where you are, but how has this affected your life?
Don't tell us where you are.
Well, the past 2 days have been very chaotic and overwhelming. I had to make some travel plans, really fast, but I was not planning on earlier. So there was a little bit of coordination that had to happen. And I'm now in a location where I don't think anyone would find me, not in any of the locations that Taylor Lorenz leaked or that anyone
She didn't do that.
find.
She did not do that.
But
Pause it. I'm sorry. What locations is she referring to?
Yeah, what exactly? Like, we found out who you are, you freak. That's all we wanted to know. Like, I don't know what do you think people are doing? Like, they want to find out more about your, like Sagar and Jetty saying there's an actual really interesting question to be asked about here about how this person
they've weighed in on that too.
About how, yeah, of course, because of how this person caught on so much. The person caught on so much because they're doing bigotry to bigots. I don't know what else. Maybe Sagar, dude. Let's see it on whatever your show is called now. Do 10 minutes on what's so interesting. Why don't you do the story rather than asking Taylor Lorenz to do it? Because frankly, I'm more interested in just finding out what this person's name is and what they do.
And I just want to clarify my point earlier because this is now from a Daily Beast article about the German claim. In the piece, the reporter makes note of findings from software developer Travis Brown that helped her reveal the account's creator, the Chai Reichik. Specifically, Brown uncovered deleted tweets from the account, including those in which Reichik claimed she attended the January 6th Capitol riot. Brown, Lorenz notes, received support from the German-based Prototype Fund. The fund, according to its website, supports ideas in civic tech, data literacy, with money from Germany's Federal Ministry of Education and Research. So these are the kinds of like logical corruption leaps that Greenwald will make all these ties together, and now Tucker Carlson, of course, has perfected that because Lorenz worked with a software developer to help source her story. She is getting paid by the German government and needs to register as a foreign agent. Just ridiculous garbage.
Yeah, just bullshit.
It's been a little bit tough, but I'm not going to let this get me down.
Well, I hope we see you in our studio someday. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, God.
I mean, there's not really much more to add to that.
No, other than I'll just reiterate that I'm glad that it's been overwhelming for her, and hope this continues to be a very, very unpleasant experience for her. And I would just applaud Tucker and Glenn Greenwald and all these other freaks for continuing to disgrace themselves by falling over their dicks trying to defend her.
Let's take a call. Calling from a 510 number. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
This is Jason from Mexico.
It's Jason. Jason Miles.
That is me.
Hello.
I'm in his house. It better be me. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. How are you?
Yeah. Good. How are you?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
I was watching your show, and it was very good. It was very good. And there was a moment where people were sending IMs about, I guess Sam wasn't aligned with the right leftist podcaster like they wanted him to be.
Apparently.
It's almost as if people assume that we all have these cliques.
Well, you're in our clique. The This Is Revolution is in our clique, I would say.
Until we piss you off.
Yeah, I better watch it with some of
Yeah,
that stuff.
exactly. We'll excommunicate you.
I do think it's rather hilarious that people do assume that there are like legitimate like podcast clicks because someone has done a show with someone else.
It's so
and that
dumb.
there's some
Yeah.
blind allegiance. That's just not how it works. But on another note that is way more important, the draft is coming up,
Yes.
and people want to know what you think the New York Giants should do with their first round pick. Do they go offense and try to get
Well, they
more
have
weapons?
two. They have 2 first-round picks.
Mm-hmm. Do you go offense with both?
Oh, no. Like, okay, so Jason, the audience will kill me if I go too long on this. I'll answer.
They will not kill you. They love this. I'm
All
sure
right.
the chat is crazy with Emma's. We love it when you do sports talk.
I won't take your word for it.
And also, before you answer this question,
Yeah.
I want you to understand you have to stop shitting on North Dakota in front of Matt.
Do I
You were
do
talking
so?
about
Do I do that?
you were talking about Trey Lance.
Mm.
Trey Lance went to North Dakota State. I'm sure you said derogatory things about Carson Wentz. And stop shitting on North Dakota in front of Matt. It's not fair.
I actually made myself look silly by being a Carson Wentz defender for the first part of his career, and I actually thought he'd have success in Indy, and I was wrong. I was wrong. Yeah.
Trey Lance is from Marshall, Minnesota, too.
I hear he's a nice guy. I just don't think he's very good. Okay, so I think the Giants should go with either, if they're still available, Jason, Ike Ekwonu or Evan Neal, offensive tackle. Either way, Giants have had the worst offensive line, the worst, not even close, in the NFL for the past 5 years, and seemingly can't get it fixed. So that's the highest priority. But I actually think our fan base is downplaying, because the offense has been the defense has been competent, the need for an actual difference maker on the defensive line. So I think priority 1 is offensive tackle and priority 2 is edge rusher. And I'd be very happy with Trayvon Walker or Jermaine Johnson out of Florida State. How does that sound?
Not Thibodeau out of Oregon?
I'm a little worried that he is not that he's a bit of a highlight machine and not that consistent of a player. So I'd be fine with getting him. I just think he's more boom or bust than the other 2 guys that I just mentioned.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, you could say the same thing about Jadeveon Clowney, but I think he's been a very consistent player in the league. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree that, although, yes, injuries have caught up to him, but when he's on, he's on.
And is the Daniel Jones experiment over in New York? Is it time to move on?
Yeah.
Or are you going to give him 1 more year? You feel it's time to move on?
Well, I mean, look, I feel bad for the kid, right? I think he got a tough break, and I think he has got a lot of upside in some ways, but I think you're always in this modern NFL. If you don't have a top 10 quarterback, you have to be always searching for a top 10 quarterback. And it's a little painful, but I think that this will probably be his last year in New York.
That's saying a lot, considering I would say the Giants have probably never really had a top 10 quarterback, because Phil Simms was mediocre at best, and Jeff Hostetler as well.
Eli was always like number 11.
Yeah.
But it's a different time. It's a different time, Jason. I think the league's evolved, but I gotta let you go because.
Okay.
But let's do this again on This Is Revolution. We can talk about sports again.
I'm gonna send you a private message.
All right,
Peace out,
cool.
guys.
All right, see you later.
Jason.
Bye. I love sports calls. Like, I am nervous about the draft. We'll see next Thursday. Let's do another clip though. Do you want to talk JD Vance or Michelle Bachmann on Ilhan Omar? All right, here we go. The right wing continues to lose its minds, collective mind, over the fact that Ilhan Omar had the gall to call out the hypocrisy of seeing a viral video of people singing a Christian song on a flight, to point out that if Muslims had done the same thing or began praying in the aisles, that there would have been a conniption. I feel like it's fairly obvious to make that kind of point. Michelle Bachmann, though, does not feel the same. Love to see her again. You know, she's one of those conservatives that came out of the Sarah Palin mold, tried to harness that kind of energy. But really, she's quite uninteresting because she's just a bigot, as she'll demonstrate here.
Well, it's a concept called Islamic supremacism. There are those within Islam who believe that they are superior to all other people. So they arrogantly look down their nose at any other faith or any other non-faith. And Islamic supremacism is really the answer here. It's interesting. She serves in a Christian state. Primarily, that is the faith of the people in Minnesota, but yet she looks down her nose at Christians in Minnesota or Jews or non-believers, and she engages in Islamic supremacism. That's true throughout all of the history of Islam. It has been seen as a warring religion, and it's brought about great death and tragedy to many people. Even so, we pray for those who are from the Islamic faith that they would come to true faith, faith in Jesus Christ, and that's what we pray now. Well, it's a concept called Islamic.
So yeah, my favorite part of that is the lack of awareness. When she talks about how Ilhan Omar is an Islamic supremacist, she looks down her nose at people of other faiths. She doesn't respect other people's faiths. And I really pray that Muslims will come to Jesus.
She finds the right faith. Yeah. This thing where they believe their religion is better than everyone else's, and they don't even have their religion that's better than everyone else's, because that's our religion, Christianity.
Because it's a lot more, Christianity is a lot more peaceful, right? A lot more peaceful.
Yeah, definitely no history of sort of war in the name of sort of religious
Never.
supremacy there.
Never. I mean, it's just like beyond that, the grossness of the broad strokes psychological diagnoses of people of a faith that has over 1 billion people in the world. Muslims are discriminated against in many other countries and do not have like the characterization of Islamic supremacism that she lays out there. Look at how Rohingya Muslims are treated, for example. There's no Islamic supremacism that is dominating in those regions. So it's just, I mean, she's a theocrat, and this is my theocracy is better than this theocracy.
Yeah, exactly. She wants Christian supremacy, and this is what you used to hear like in that Jesus Camp documentary that was made like 10 or 15 years ago, probably now. You hear these like right-wing evangelicals look at like the Taliban or Al Qaeda and be like, now those people, they have some dedication.
Yeah.
It is like there's a bit of an envy there.
Yeah, she takes they take their tips from right-wing religious governments, etc. They prefer that that's what the case is. And here, and she tries to make the claim that Minnesota is a Christian state. That's news to me. I'm old enough to remember a few weeks ago, or at least a week ago, Charlie Kirk was up in arms about the fact that because Minneapolis and Minnesota in general has a large Muslim population, that they're going to allow for a call to prayer. That doesn't sound like a fully Christian state to me. But
and also
Muslim people don't count.
Ilhan Omar does not look down on Christians.
No, I mean that goes without saying, in my opinion. It's like that's another thing too. Conservative aggrievement is this like constant state of feeling talked down to and victimized.
Yeah.
And based on nothing. They're the most insecure people in the entire world. They see slights in every corner because they feel under threat, imagined threat, all the time.
Yeah, and also just by the way, because there's an impression created when Charlie Kirk starts talking about Mogadishu and stuff about who Ilhan Omar's voters are, but it is a majority white district.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, it's like 60% white.
I didn't realize
She
that.
does have Muslims in her district, but it is this impression is created that it's like, oh, it's just all these refugees in her district, but no, it's a majority white district. And if they had a problem with her being a Islamic supremacist, it doesn't show up in the voting.
Dave from Jamaica, if we were going to talk music, I heard Islamic music remixed to trap beat, and that shit slaps. Chris T. Cucker, God almighty, these motherfuckers are so openly and proudly racist, homophobic, transphobic, sexist, and the other hateful crap. Space Case. All right, Emma, move it along. Either give us sports gambling picks guaranteed to hit, or let's get back to making fun of lawn signs and right-wingers. Fair enough. Coffee table book hater. Regarding Mariana's call, leftists have been very uninformed about veganism for the purpose of environmental activism for way too long. Please have someone on who is knowledgeable about this issue. Diana Rogers and Rob Wolf wrote an excellent book on the subject called Sacred Cow. Veganism doesn't help the planet, and it actually doesn't even help animals. Regenerative farming will save the planet and probably save your health as well. It's very disappointing that so many of my favorite lefties have totally shut their brains off to the subject because they don't want to be in the same meat bro space as Joe Rogan. Dude, I don't really know how that's true.
I mean, I think it might be oversold, and I think like probably some interesting stuff in that book. But I think generally eating meat is, or like lowering your meat intake is a positive for the environment.
Chardonnay Socialist. Jason knows so much about politics and music. Do we really need this level of detail in sports? The answer is yes. Aaron is not cool. We don't need another Thibodeau in New York. We have one too many as it is. I can hear Bradley cackling about that from his apartment. Sam's estranged Bonobo. Bradley says, hard agree. I have a sister who's a pretty devout Mormon. When her late husband was suffering from cancer and couldn't work, the church community provided her and her 8 kids with a robust social safety net. She never had to worry about finances, and it was awesome. However, my other sister, who is not Mormon and has no similar community, has spent the last 2 years fighting depression and PTSD from an abusive relationship, has not been able to work, basically had her entire livelihood stolen from her, and has had to do a majority of it alone, just with some help from me and my parents. My other siblings, along with the Mormon sister, have opted to shun her and deprive her of the same support they selflessly received in their greatest time of need. Honestly, I don't blame the Christian part of them, though I blame the Republican side. Yeah, I mean, like, again, this is not to paint a rosy portrait of the way churches treat particularly LGBTQ people.
But that safety net is why that people like them.
Yeah, exactly. Tojo's bald head. Waters deflated her tires because of the implication. What?
I don't quite follow
Me
that.
either. Affluence and wretchedness. The boy who went on to stalk, harass, and threaten me started out by, quote, carrying my backpack for me at school, which really meant snatching my backpack and walking away with it, so I had no choice but to follow him as he led me away from my friends.
Oh my
Subtle,
God.
controlling shit like this is a big red flag, friends. Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say.
I mean, that is not even your backpack thing is a little bit subtle. The Jesse Waters thing is like, good Lord.
Yeah.
Like we have an absolute monster on our hands.
Come shower with Crowder. Glenn said that he would like to see Taylor Lorenz get visited at her home or her family's house and see what her reaction is. I can send the clip to the MR email.
Yeah, I think journalists going up to, if it's by a journalist, I think Taylor Lorenz, yeah, like a journalist can go ask them. That's fine. Like this idea that journalists knocking on people's door is abuse is silly.
Journalism is only commodifying leaker documents.
Right. Yeah. It's giving a Piero Medire.
From the safety of your compound. Anyway, Warren from Toronto. I think both of you brought up a great point in terms of you can't just tear down religion. You need to offer something in the form of community to replace it. I am a lapsed Catholic, but one thing that has merged community and my politics is joining a Filipino socialist organization focused on migrant worker issues in North America and abroad. Some members are religious, some aren't, but the community is liberating in terms of my personal connection and working to uplift exploited migrant workers. That's a great example. Omega's Henron Dragon. Hi, crew. If it just makes it easier, just call me Omega since my anime and Idarola-inspired name might throw y'all off. Is that John Idarola? Piece of shit. But oh goody, so Fox still has creeps, and I heard from a relative of a former Fox and CNN employee that guys like Chris Cuomo were seen eyeing up girls under 20 in their glass building to where it was known by women there. I also work for sexual predators who had a fling with my coworkers and got reported to the labor department. How are women like my wife and eventually my daughter supposed to feel safe again?
Yeah. I mean, I've heard years ago somebody that was doing social media for television personalities, not necessarily political, and big part of that was coordinating dates in the DMs with
Oh,
young
yeah.
women.
I worked very early on in my career with somebody who uses a public profile to be a predator, so I totally understand. Anyway, Chardonnay Socialist. This just in. Jesse Waters uses Job Bluth dating tactics. Yeah. Punch Drunk Pulpit. Maybe give Waters a break. I met my wife when she held me captive in a remote cabin so that I could write her a novel. The moment she broke my leg so I couldn't get away is when I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. All right, let's take one more call. Calling from a 905 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Is it me?
This is you.
Oh my goodness.
Hi.
Emma.
Hi.
And Matt too. How's it going? I'm Jane from Canada.
You're who from Canada?
Jane.
Jane.
Yes.
I love your disposition. What's on your mind?
Oh, that's nice. Yours too. And I want to say that I think Matt is one of the greatest people on the internet.
I agree.
I feel like there's maybe a small town vibe that comes from you that I just really relate to, and I really enjoy all of your content. Just wanted to say that.
Well, thank you.
Is that all?
Yeah. No, I really wanted to say that the stuff that you were talking about religion, community, I think that there's something to that for sure. But I really think it comes down to something so much more based in psychology. And I wanted to advocate for a certain Swiss English philosopher named Alain de Botton.
Sure.
He is the CEO of I guess you could call it a CEO, but he produces this content called The School of Life. But where I first saw him was this TED Talk called Atheism 2.0. And I found it so illuminating because it was all about the things that, yes, we all understand what we don't want to keep from religion that interferes with the wideness of the world, but he really drills down into the things psychologically that people need from religion and that we actually have been devoid of in our modern lives. And it isn't just about community, it's really about not just connection either, but empathy. And I wanted to just leave it on a personal note in that I grew up in a very small place, and my family was not religious, mostly because the Catholic Church did a number on our neighborhood. We'll just say that. And I come from a neighborhood and a family who largely rejected that. I remember asking my mother why we don't go to church, and she stopped dead in her tracks and she thought very carefully and she said, I just believe that if you want to talk to God, you don't have to be in his house. But if you want to do that, that's fine. And it was a really strange conversation. But the reason I bring that up is because we grew up in a very unempathetic household. We were not very well off, and my father was working all the time. And when he came home, he did not have much interest in us, frankly, myself or my younger brother. As a result, my brother has gone down quite a libertarian path. That said, he doesn't do much reading. So when I try to prove his points wrong, and usually there's a lot of content from you guys, a lot of reading that I've done, I suggest books, but then he says, well, who has the time for all of that? That's all nonsense. And it got to the point where once he sent me a text that literally said, look, at the end of the day, the reason I'm a libertarian is basically because I think he said, the government is a bit like a dad. And at a certain point, it just needs to F off. And it was the most revealing thing that he's ever said. And I truly believe that if you look into, and I don't want to do pop psychology or anything, but if you really look into what daddy issues is, why do you think all these young men want to lean on Rogan? Why do you think all these young men want to turn to Jordan Peterson? It's because their fathers have been told their whole lives that the only worth that they have is how much worth they can bring into their household. And if you're aligned that way, if that's all you believe, and you don't believe that anything is bigger than yourself, then you won't have empathy. I didn't have empathy for a really long time. And I truly believe that that is the plague that libertarianism and conservatism is. It's not that they're even bad people necessarily, but there's a true lack of love that they've been shown in their entire lives. And they're convinced that the best thing to do is block that all out, bottom line everything, at the end of the day, everything, and turn their brains off, because what's the good use of looking down into your heart and seeing all that hurt? I really believe that's what libertarianism is.
I think that there's a little bit to that. I mean, we've had debates with libertarians on this show, and there are a few of them that come to mind that there may be something similar to that going on with those guys.
Jane, thanks so much for the call.
Oh, sorry.
No,
Yeah,
it's okay.
Thank you so much.
We got to run, but I really appreciate your insight.
Appreciate you too. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. We have one more really quick call because we have an IM saying they want to promote a labor event. Calling from an 804 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, guys. Hi, Emma. Hi, Matt. Hope you guys are having a good day. I'm sure you guys have been paying attention to labor news. I remember your interview you guys had earlier was really great with the lady from Workers United. As you guys know, or I'm sure you're aware, there were 5 stores that voted to unionize yesterday in Richmond, Virginia, which makes it the most unionized city in the country for Starbucks stores. Wow. I'm very excited about that.
Nice.
On Sunday, yeah, I'm super stoked. My friend Dylan Dick did a great job organizing his store in Westchester. But more importantly, we have an event on Sunday. Bernie Sanders will be speaking. There will be a lot of music at the National Theater in Richmond, Virginia. It's called Unity Fest. It is free to attend, but there will be donations for the union's funds. And we will all be celebrating the huge labor victory of all 5 stores that voted, voting yes to the union in Richmond, Virginia.
All right. Well, check that out. If you are in the area in Virginia and you want to go support, hear Bernie speak. Sam, thanks for letting us know.
Of course. Have a good day.
You too.
Richmond,
Bye.
Virginia. Look at that.
All right. We're going to read 10 more IMs and we are going to get out of here. Yo, dog. The School of Life guy is whack. Big Joel did the whole video on him and his channel. Please don't promote it. Okay. Sean from Maryland. Hard agree with the caller. Matt is a genius, an incredibly valuable voice on the left. I wish him. I had him as a professor in college. He would have been a great professor.
Not a genius, although I wanted to be a professor.
Judy Giuliani. Waters was doing the dentist system. Okay, so this is an Always Sunny joke that I don't understand. Dan from Columbus, pretty sure the I am about because of the implication was yes. Coffee table book hater. Interesting watching Emma and Matt scoff at my comment and then go on to say eating less meat is better with no information whatsoever to back that claim up. Oh, you guys. Just common sense.
I mean, yeah. I mean, what I've heard about. First of all, go fuck yourself. No information to back that up. Like, I've heard plenty about like water usage for beef and stuff like that. Like, I will
I just spilled water
consider.
on myself.
Like, I even said like there might be some good stuff in the book, and I did consider reading it. But the idea that this is based on absolutely nothing,
It's
is
rude,
is
yeah.
silly.
All right. 3 more. Sylvester, just to comment on how some religious institutions can function as a social safety net. Jesus. There are a lot of churches that are conscious of this and explicitly state that they want politics to abandon providing a safety net because it makes people look to politics to solve their problems instead of the Lord. Yes. Lex Browser's past. All right, Jesus. Oh snap! Michelle Bachman Turner Overdrive is still alive. Yes, she is. And the final I am of the day. I'll find a good one. Warren from Toronto. I think both of you brought up a great point in terms of you can't just tear down religion. You need to offer something in the form. I already read this one. Damn it. Dan from South Carolina. I think if there was one issue for the left to organize around, it should be calls to end pollution in every industry and neighborhood. If we frame it as a pollution issue, even conservatives can relate. In my community, we are mostly red, but we have pollution everywhere and people hate it. Even if their eyes glaze over on the science, making them visualize an oil spill in their yard and water supply is something everyone can agree on is a travesty.
Yeah, I think
That's a good place to start.
I don't know how effective that will be at gaining like ideological conservatives, like people who are constantly just getting sort of Republican talking points regularly, but the average person wants to take care of the environment that they live in.
All right, guys, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. We will see you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101